Good evening and welcome to Life on a Fast Lane. I'm Joe Spina along with Avrahm Lapidus.
Lapidus.
It is Lapidus, isn't it?
Avrahm Lapidus.
Yes. Who is very tired today, and he may not be that sharp because he's writing a play.
Thank you. And a little introduction. Yes.
Are you?
Yeah. It's already done.
So I understand you're having someone right now transcribe. Is that how you call it?
Thank God for you that you got me this girl, because I have a lot of people that did it for me for years in Brookline, but they have to go back and forth every day to Brookline because you can't read my handwriting. It was very hard. This is a lovely girl. She'll do a good job.
Well, here's the point. Do you think folks out there necessarily know what Brookline is? So you have to scope it. We're talking about Massachusetts.
Brookline is next to Chestnut Hill, which is next to Newton, which is a kind of town I like to be in. I'm not a beach person. I'm not a golfer.
Which happens to be next to Boston, by the way. It's a suburb of Boston.
Yes.
And Avrahm, upscale to Swampscott,
And
Massachusetts.
you can get on the streetcar. I made some of my best friends over the years by being on the streetcar at the same time every day. The green line is clean. It's nice, lovely people.
Mhm.
Then you go on the orange line. It's like going into combat. You got to have a helmet on and search and destroy, because you don't know who's going to come for you when you're on the orange line.
That's right.
It's
And by the way,
it's scary.
why don't you be honest with the people that you were banished?
What?
You were exiled, banished from Brookline. They sent you out.
No, they did not.
They did not, huh?
This was a choice that I made that I shouldn't have.
That you shouldn't have.
Yeah.
And why is that?
Because I was paying for my place in Brookline, and I was paying after my mom passed away for her place out here. And the reason that I wanted to keep this place out here is because it had all the antiques and family, stuff that goes back
that's
to
nice.
my great grandmother. So I said goodbye to my place and stayed here. And I thought I would be here for 6 months. I've been here for 10 years.
Now, Avrahm, it seems to me with the sense I'm picking up is that you're a traditionalist.
You'd have to define for me what you mean by traditionalist.
Well, that's right. I should define it, shouldn't I? That you hold to transcendental values, is that?
I have cups and sauce and dishes in my house that belong to my great grandmother.
That's what I meant by
I found the grave. Wait to hear this one. I am saying the memorial prayer in the Jewish religion is called Kaddish. I'm saying the memorial prayer for my great grandmother today. She died 120 years ago. I have her grave in North Reading, Massachusetts.
That's what I consider traditionalist.
That's unbelievable. And why are these graves for Jewish people out in the middle of nowhere? Because up until World War II, did you know that Jews were not allowed to be buried in the inner city?
No, I did not know that. And what was the rationale for that?
I'll ask you.
I used to watch it.
That's why all the Jewish cemeteries are way the hell out.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
I used to watch a show called Curb Your Enthusiasm with Larry David. He was producer of Steinfeld.
Yeah.
Funny as heck. And he did a lot of stuff about Jewish tradition, and the comedy is hilarious. But I never knew this. Is this accurate that if you're tattooed, you can't be buried in a Jewish cemetery?
Usually the thing was that if you took your own life, you could not be buried in a Jewish cemetery.
I believe that's true for Catholicism also.
As things got a little bit straightened out, they said, well, you could be buried in a cemetery, but towards the entrance.
And the outcast.
Yeah, exactly.
But it is not prohibitive to have.
Well, you're not supposed to put anything on your body. No earrings, no tattoos, no. If you have a tattoo, are they going to prevent you from being buried? I don't know.
What about cremation? Is that permitted?
Oh, that is not a good thing to do.
Not at all.
People do it, but it's not supposed to be.
Within the is that orthodox?
That's you don't put it into qualifications. It's being Jewish. You're not supposed to be cremated. Okay.
And what's the rationale of that?
Well, because you when you're buried, the body is only there, but the soul goes to heaven.
Right. Maybe.
No, it goes to heaven. You have to believe that there's more to it than just where we are now.
Well, I don't have a problem with that, but what about if you're an evil, despicable human being? Do you go to heaven?
Everyone in the end can be forgiven.
No matter what.
No matter what. I mean, do we believe in hell? Technically speaking, no, we do not. But I've also added a request or a couple of people I can't stand. Please don't have them near me when I go.
I've always thought of hell as think of heaven. Let me go to heaven first. As a repetition of all those wonderful moments in your life played over and over again into infinity. And that hell will be the exact opposite. All of those horrible, stressful moments that you had in life and all the evil and bad things you did.
Well, excuse me, you're talking about hell on earth.
Yeah, because I can't imagine hell not on earth. That's the problem. So, speaking of hell on earth, did you watch a speech the other night to the joint?
No, I did not. I made specifically.
Did you get any briefings, news flashes on it?
Well, the thing of it is, it's a very sad state of affairs in this country now, politics. It's reached a level that is so low, it couldn't go any lower. It's like the Republicans versus the Democrats versus the Republicans, and in the middle, the poor people who need stuff don't get anything accomplished. How could they take 9 months to figure out that people can't put food on their table?
Some people can't put food on.
A fair amount.
Yeah.
A fair amount with kids can't put food on the table. That's terrible. Absolutely terrible.
But have you ever asked the question, why is that the case?
Why is that the case?
Yeah.
It's not. There's just not one specific reason.
No, I know that.
Sometimes it's the
but you're making a blanket statement. You're saying people can't put food on their table. Yeah, that's not very nice.
It used to be in the old days, if you had a job, you lost your job, within a fair amount of time, you could find another job.
Uh-huh.
Nowadays, you lose your job. There's just nothing there.
Well, actually, that's not accurate, Avrahm, because there's about 7 million unfinished jobs or unfilled jobs. And
why are they unfilled? Because they require special.
No, as a matter of fact, they're unfilled because they're considered "quote unquote" dirty jobs.
Oh well, that's another thing.
And Americans don't want to do dirty jobs. Now, dirty jobs are defined as construction, landscaping, roofing, painting, all that hard stuff that the young folks from Guatemala and Nicaragua who come up here legally and illegally. There's an argument that was made that the illegal aliens, whatever term you want to use, who are coming here are effectively modern day slaves.
Oh yeah. That's not. I wouldn't even use the word modern. That they're slaves.
But here's the difference. Unlike the slaves of the past, they're not bound to the land. They earn money and they can buy their freedom, figuratively speaking. I know that a bunch of pickup trucks that I see driving all over the place, that have names on them.
Garcia and Hernandez.
Yeah, and Fernandez.
And Monachica. This is how they start into life.
Well, exactly. But before they used to be Merino.
Well, but what's going to happen is they won't be able to get it. But whether they know it or not, maybe their kids or their grandchildren will be able to get it. They may become a doctor or a lawyer, not in their time, though.
Well, isn't that what the whole immigrant story and the American dream is all about?
Absolutely. But unfortunately, there's a group of people in this country that don't see it that way. Right?
There was, and
there's a lot of them. Actually,
but they're making excuses for their own failures. They will not accept the fact that they are responsible for the negative consequences of their life, or they bear some responsibility. This is where I have a problem, and I had a problem with George Floyd. Now, the narrative of George Floyd is that somehow he was an innocent person, a wonderful human being, a father, a pillar of the community, who was murdered, as a matter of fact, that's the word they use, by a renegade policeman, a white one, because of systemic racism. That's not what happened. And they say that George Floyd bore no responsibility for what happened to him. Now, what happened to him was tragic. But you know what? If he wasn't passing a phony $20 bill, he'd be alive today, wouldn't he? If he wasn't committing a crime, he'd be alive today. Now, you can say, well, that's a petty crime. It's a crime. and the responsibility of the store owner that when he spotted that phony $20 bill was to call the police, which he did. And the police responded. And then compounding that, Judge Floyd had a whole bunch of fentanyl in his system. He was a drug addict. Now, I'm sorry to say that contributes to bad things, and you have control over that. If you drink too much, you better stop drinking if you want to keep your liver.
And look at the outcome from all this.
The what?
Look at the fallout from all that.
That's the whole point. The whole point of the matter is something that should have been, at least ambiguous, at worst ambiguous, turned out to be
horrendous.
Exactly. And it impacted this whole entire country and the psyche of the country negatively, not positively. I wrote a piece. I want you to think about this. Why do we have police and why do we have fire? And why do we have public safety and armies? Tell me. It's a very simple formulation. You, me, and all those folks out there at one point in time in history gathered. We were hunters and gatherers. That's how we ate. There were no McDonald's back then, no Whole Foods, no market baskets, right? So if you didn't get any game, if you weren't that good of a hunter, and everything that was gathered, you had, climate change, and there were no more berries, strawberries, and whatever coming from the trees, what happened? You starved. And starvation leads to barbarism of the first order. Would you agree?
That's back then. Starvation today leads to a crime.
But yes, but I'm going back then because the point being is that all of that stopped. At that point in time, we were quote unquote savages, right? We lived like animals.
What makes you think we're still not savages?
Because I'll tell you what happened. We bumped into a river and we saw some grass. And we ate the grass and the grass wasn't bad. And then we said, you know what? I can stay here. I don't have to roam around. I can turn around and grow this grass, be it wheat, barley, oats, whatever, right? And I can stay here. Now, the minute that you stay at a place, when you stake out a claim to a territory, you now have a nation. You now have a neighborhood. You now have a home. You now have the concept of private property. And the way you delineate private property is through stakes, imaginary lines, walls, or whatever. It has to have borders. And that's the beginning of civilization. Now, some of these folks that did the farming would have to be protected against marauders who came in and said, screw this, I'm going to grab this food. Why, I'm not going to work for it, right? I'm going to go in and kill them and grab it all. And so the farmer and the hard worker, be it a he or a she, said to the strong among them, listen, you don't have to till the soil, but you prevent those marauders from coming in and we'll take care, we'll feed you. And then they said to Avrahm, you write great plays and I need entertainment. You write the plays and I'll make sure you get your loaf of bread. And that's the beginning of civilization. It's all predicated on individual enterprise, the thing we call capitalism, formation, creation of capital, because you can't do anything unless you're capital wealth, and private property, which by itself necessitates borders, walls, stakes, claims. And you know what? AOC and Bernie Sanders and the socialists, leftists, Marxists, and communists, they deny private property. They deny borders. That's why when you talk about open borders, they don't believe in borders. They don't believe in private property. They don't believe in free enterprise. They believe in a classless society, which is self-evident, impossible, because we're individually different. No human being is the same as anybody else. We're uniquely different.
I think it was about...
And I'm going to have a little beverage while you ponder this.
I think it was about 1868. They tried to set up here in West Roxbury, a commune for communism called Brook Farm. It was in West Roxbury.
Exactly.
And they stayed around for about 15 minutes. Because one guy was saying, how come they gave me more land than they gave it to you? How come this guy's got 16 tomatoes? I got 4.
So what are you telling me?
It doesn't work.
Happened in Jamestown, too.
It happens anywhere. It happened in the Soviet Union.
Exactly. That's why it collapsed and imploded.
It's happening in China now.
Exactly. And happened in Cuba. So does socialism, communism, progressive, as they call themselves, does it work?
In the long run or in the medium run, no.
What do you mean in the long and the medium run?
The long run is 50 years.
Avram, you shop a lot, right? Oh, well, you shop models. You go into CVS stores, Target, or any of those stores?
No.
You go into Market Basket, Whole Foods.
I don't tell anybody I go into Market Basket because I'm embarrassed.
But you do. I've caught you there.
I go to Whole Foods.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's because you're upscale.
Okay.
You ever go to the cosmetic section
Where?
of any store?
Whole Foods, yes.
Do you see a bunch of shampoo and conditioners?
Yeah, well, because it's a little action because we have so much.
But what is the reason why you have so much variety of shampoo and conditioners? Why?
Because we got a variety of people.
What about that? What happens when you
Why
have
the best question is why are there 300 television stations?
That's a good point. That proves my point. And if they don't have an audience, what happens?
They'll find another outlet.
No, but that's what I'm talking about. What happens to that outlet that doesn't get an audience? That TV station or outlet or broadcast to which there is no audience. What happens?
He says goodbye.
Isn't that called capitalism?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's called survival of the fittest.
Well, it is, and that's Spencerian Darwinism, right?
Darwinism, yes.
But the real issue here is that in the real world that you and I live in, those folks out there live in, that the folks in Washington, D.C. do not live in.
Well, a better example is you take the Market Basket. You take it, but you take the Market Basket, you take Whole Foods, okay? Why is it that we need two separate places?
Because people have different palates and different appetites.
No, because some are rich, some are poor.
No, you told me what? First of all, folks, I'm going to let Avram give you a little history about not Market Basket, Whole Foods. You're talking about Whole Foods. What was it originally? Where did it come from originally?
Well, Whole Foods started as a corporation down in Dallas, Texas, but how did they come up into New England? There was a guy that started a natural store in Brookline called Bread and Circus. This is 1969. It was, and every year he'd buy the store next to him. And then he'd buy the store next to the store. And before you knew it, the guy had within 10 years, had the whole entire block. Within 15 years, he had 8 locations. All of a sudden, these people in Dallas, Texas said, did you see that guy up in New England? He's got a foolproof formula. We should buy him out and make a statement up in New England. They followed his plans to the T. They even kept him on for many years as a vice president who actually ran the company. Now Whole Foods, I think, has 150 stores, and they were going out of business. They were going bankrupt, which is why it was a perfect thing for Amazon to buy.
Why were they going bankrupt?
Because there were people now like Costco and BJ's who were selling natural and health products.
So competition.
A lot less money.
And competition.
A lot less money.
I get that.
At the same time, you have a woman who pulls up in a Mercedes Benz that costs $90,000. Is okay to park in the parking lot at Whole Foods. It's not going to park at the store. It's Target.
So what are you telling me?
Snob appeal.
Okay. Putting all that aside, what was the name of the original chain of Whole Foods up here in New England?
The Bread and Circus.
You know where that term comes from?
From the poet, from the Roman poet.
And his name was Juvenal.
Juvenal, yeah.
And what was it analogous? Why was he talking about, there's a second part to it. It says, give the folks bread and circus and they'll never revolt.
You know, well, bread and circus, bread is to sustain them. They have to live.
Right.
Circus is to entertain them.
Exactly.
Okay, so hear me out. What an perfect combination. You're being fed and you're being entertained. What more do you need?
Exactly. And what happens? You control the populace.
How is Las Vegas in its early days able to survive?
With bread and entertainment.
Bread and a lot of circus.
A lot of circus.
A lot of circus, okay?
Free food. They give the food is practically for free.
One thing about the gambling and one thing about the lottery, people who buy it think to themselves that they actually could win.
Like me.
No one buys it because they think they're going to lose. Okay, they think that tomorrow they're going to wake up and they're going to have a lot of money. And as long as you can convince someone of that, you've got a successful operation no matter what you do.
Which leads me to, isn't that precise what President Biden did the other night? Didn't he offer, and doesn't the Progressive Democratic Party, aren't they offering bread and circus? Isn't that what they're selling?
No, with that, it's more specific, down to one word:
What?
hope.
Oh God, please.
I'm telling you,
They don't care about hope.
No, they don't. But that's what
What
they're
hope are they
revealing.
giving? What they're doing in effect is that they want to anesthetize the general public so that they don't revolt against them.
No, they know there's a lot of people out there that need some hope, and they're trying to reach
No,
out to them.
they're not.
That's how
They
they-
don't. They
that's
don't.
how they got into
They're not
office.
empathetic. They
That's how
are
they-
not empathetic.
It has nothing to do with it, whether they're really for real or not. I'm telling you. And don't drink on the show.
I want to, and this just happens to be root beer, folks.
Okay.
I'm thirsty. Go ahead. So,
If you can convince someone, you come along with me and your hope will be fulfilled, you got someone that's going to follow you. That's what's
can
happening.
you sell lottery tickets in Brookline?
Not too many,
Why is that?
because people already have money.
So what you're telling me is that the lottery and the bread and the circus and the rest of it is for the underclass.
Basically, of course.
And what's the purpose of keeping the underclass and giving them a sense of hope?
Because that
Is
way
that
you-
altruistic? Is that what it's all
No,
about? What is it
that-
about?
That way you keep them from anarchy.
That's exactly what Juvenile said. He says, if you want to control the populace, give them circus and give them entertainment and they'll never revolt.
That was now, but today you got to give people hope. People have to believe it's going to get better.
Did you know? Yeah, well, you know what? Juvenile said that about 2,000 years ago.
Okay, he didn't say.
And you know what
What?
happened?
What?
If you take a look at what the situation in Rome at that time, don't forget, at that time, Rome was a republic. It had just moved into dictatorship, to empire. That's inevitably, once you have tyranny is the consequence of pure democracy. You agree with that or not?
Let me say something to you.
Yes.
2 weeks from today, we have a major Jewish holiday.
Which is called?
It's called Shavuos, and it's when you plant the crops in the earth. Now, Israel is the only country in the world where you plant and sow the fields for 6 years. On the seventh year, just like the seventh day of the week on the Sabbath,
Yep.
you leave the land alone for a year. So it can revitalize itself.
Okay.
Okay. And we believe that God will help you in the 6th year to grow even that much more so you can sustain yourself. Okay. Julius Caesar and Alexander the Great, you've heard of the two of them,
I do have.
gave the Jews, when they were under their control, a bounty so that they could survive without having to work for the 7th year. Can you imagine that?
Well, that's a nice story, but that's actually historically accurate.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. What's that tell you?
That there can be humanity when you think that there may not be.
Well, so people can understand this and scope this properly. Alexander the Great preceded Julius Caesar by several hundred years. Agreed?
Yeah.
And at that particular point in time, the world as we understand it was populated by at most 100 to 200 million people, the entire world. That includes the Americas and the quote unquote old world. Of that population, for example, when Julius Caesar was at his peak, there were 60 million people in the entire Roman Empire. 60 million, which is a little bigger than California population today. Of that number, 8 million were Jews, which meant that the Jewish population was significant, was a majority of folks in that particular time frame were ethnically Jews. And so you had to pay attention. They were warriors too, by the way. Jews could fight.
Really?
Oh,
Really?
yeah. Did you ever hear of David? He took on a guy named Goliath.
I read a report by the Rand Corporation many years ago in college
Yeah.
that the armed forces really do not like having Jews in their ranks.
And why is that?
Because if you say to a guy from Alabama, I want you to go up there and take that hill. Okay, sir. You say that to a Jew, do we really need that hill? What are we going to accomplish by getting that hill? Okay.
So they make great lawyers.
But not great military.
If that were the case, how did Israel survive?
That is a completely different story, and that is people that beg to be part of that coalition. Okay, that you can't compare that to here.
But the reason for it being,
That's their homeland. That's their life. That's their blood.
so you're talking about survival.
Oh yeah,
So in survival, everybody becomes a warrior,
basically yes. Yeah, no choice.
which is what I was trying to get to when I said when man finally settled to become a farmer, agriculture, civilization by its very nature said, division of labor. We need soldiers, we need policemen, we need to keep order from the barbarians, from the marauders, from the freckless. Why should I work and have to give away the fruit of my labor? Why should I be extorted? Okay, that's what happened. Now, government in itself is a necessary commodity. It's a necessary, you want to call it necessary evil, call it necessary. You have to maintain order. But like anything else, embedded in it is dangers. And one of the dangers is the government becomes so big, so unwieldy, so monolithic. Now, you know what makes me laugh?
Tell me what makes you laugh?
You, but over and above you.
Okay, yeah.
But
Besides me, what else makes you laugh?
well, think about this. How can a progressive, how can the Socialist Democratic Party, the Bernie Sanders, the AOCs, the Nancy Pelosi's and Schumers of this world, how can they with a straight face say to you that they are for diversity, that they promote diversity, and at the same time talk about a monolithic, centralized, overbearing, monopolistic government? I mean, isn't a monolith the exact polar opposite of a diversity? Isn't it a contradiction?
They are playing tunes to the people that they think put them in office.
So they're playing semantic games.
Exactly, nothing more. And like you take a guy like Bernie Sanders, he's a wealthy man.
Oh, he's a multimillionaire.
Well, okay, then it's so simple for him to make these statements. Well, if this guy had to go to work and work a 50-hour job a week and support a family and have a hard time, he'd be singing a new tune.
No, that's the whole point. The whole point is why was it that they despised Donald Trump? Because Donald Trump, they couldn't understand how a guy that was a multi-billionaire actually, could empathize and had some respect and understanding of a blue-collar worker.
Because even though you're great wealthy, you still are a blue-collar person.
Well, that's what people didn't understand. They think that once you get to a certain strata, I mean, Hillary Clinton came out the other day and she talked about class. A caste system and class.
She actually talked to?
Yeah.
Really? I haven't heard of her in months.
Well, she came out on CNN.
Oh, she did?
Oh, she did. She came out on CNN and she talked about a caste system. That, United States is basically a caste system. And I'm trying to say, how the heck can you talk about a caste system when you're the beneficiary of the caste system? I mean, we have a caste system. You know why we have a caste system? Because every society that's ever been has a caste system by virtue of the fact that we're different. We're individually different. This is my argument. We're not the same. We're not ladybugs. We're not guppies. We're not drones or clones or lemons. We're individual human beings. So consequently, we have a caste system. The beauty of the United States, the beauty of capitalism, is that caste system is not rigid. You can be born into wealth and go into poverty. You can be born in poverty and become wealthy.
The lines switch very easily.
That's the beauty. And these folks are going to try to wipe those lines out. They say, I got mine. I don't want anybody else to get me theirs.
That's a classic example of why China is having some serious problems.
Very good. And explain that to the folks.
Because the people in China have had it. They used to believe that they were working for the common good of them all. Now they realize that they're not working for the common good. They're working for the common good of some people, but not themselves. And in order to keep these people in line, whenever they rise or make a statement that they don't like, they either throw them in jail or they suppress them. You can only suppress people for so long before it explodes. There are two ways to make people respect you. Either they love you to death or they're afraid of you. But if they're afraid of you, eventually the day will come when they're no longer afraid of you because they have nothing to lose.
What about the love part? What if they love you and yet they're still getting punished?
If they love you, they don't think they're being punished and they're really not being punished. See, let me tell you something. I've said this to you before. I cannot think of anybody offhand intimately well who was in power as long as Fidel Castro.
Yeah.
He was in office for over 50 years.
Cheeto.
Well,
Cheeto about the same. Go ahead.
okay, Castro was there for 50 years. Now, if he was really that horrendous, they would have either killed him, poisoned him. He would never have lasted for 50 years. And even after he died, they put his brother in with the same name, okay? Obviously, they like what they got.
That's not necessarily true. It's how they understood.
That's still liking what you got. Sometimes ignorance is bliss.
Let me ask you this.
These guys are...
If you were a female,
yeah,
would you rather be...
If I was a female, I would never be married. I wouldn't want a man. Men are disgusting. How women put up with men, I don't know.
Oh, the point is that...
So be careful what you call me, okay?
I will.
Thank you.
By the way, what happens to Caitlyn Jenner? Does she celebrate Mother's Day, Father's Day, or both?
I wouldn't give her the benefit of even talking about her.
We'll leave that alone. So you're in a harem. Are you better off in a harem, or are you better off independently and starving to death?
Yeah, no. What's the choice? There's no choice there.
So what I'm saying is that though we may look down at someone in a harem, right? Actually, their quality of life is infinitely better than the free person starving to death with no teeth and
I'll tell you,
leprosy.
I'll tell you what I miss terribly.
Yeah, I'm gonna have some more of my root beer if you don't mind.
In the old days, when I used to go with my mother or my grandmother into a big department store, and there'd be a man who would operate the elevator.
Yeah.
And he wore white gloves.
Yep.
And he
did
push the gate across.
He had a uniform.
And you start going up first floor, he would tell you what's on that floor. Go to this next floor and so on. That told you all about life that we don't have anymore.
Which was what?
Someone telling you where we are.
Isn't that the job of education and teachers to tell us where we are?
I don't know. Don't get me into the educational because I'll tell
Yeah,
you.
why not?
Because if I was blessed to have kids, I don't think I would ever send them to, I would have those.
So you're saying you're doubtful. That's ambiguous. Again.
I'm not doubtful, I'm positive.
Well, then say it straight out. You would not send your kids to Lynn Public Schools or Swampscott Public Schools? Or...
No, not even in a fancy place.
You went to Harvard.
Just because people are rich, that doesn't make them nice and kind and sweet and sincere.
But you're a graduate of Harvard grad school, right?
Yeah.
Would you send your kids to Harvard grad?
If I had to do it all over again, no.
Tell me why.
Because what did I accomplish there?
You tell me.
I was with some of the supposedly smartest people in the world that went on, and some of them in my class really truly made major corporations and did very well for themselves. But at the same time, it had no heart. You know, it was a heartless, cold place. Even the hallways and the buildings, they were always so heartless. And I remember, I was very young at the time. I was the youngest kid in the class. I think I was like 26. Most people were like in the late 30s, early 40s. That's a major distinction when you're that young, okay? And I don't know. I look back on it now. It was an expensive proposition. It took 2 years of my life, but I would not do it again. I would not do it again. I think I learned more from being with my father in the furniture business than I did from there 2 years.
Don't you think you'd learn more by doing as opposed to studying?
Absolutely.
And so today if Hillary Clinton wants to talk about caste system in class, the educational elite class, I find to be the most difficult to deal with. I get a little education, all of a sudden you think you're something special. I mean, my dad went to the third grade. I thought my dad was far more talented and intelligent than I. He accomplished more. Given his handicap, what he accomplished in his life is remarkable.
Can I say one thing to you? You don't need to use the word handicap. People who go there are handicapped. Okay? It's the ones that you just push off, and then as they're falling down, is there water in the pool?
You know who I admire? I absolutely, this is the other one, folks. We have this thing about people getting all upset about immigration, the rest, but I'm an immigrant, so aren't you?
We're all immigrants.
But I see these folks coming up from Central America with their families, going to church, causing no problem whatsoever. They're not wards of the state. They're enterprising. They work. They garden. They do construction. They create wealth. They make things better. And we vilify them in many ways. Now, I understand this whole idea that you shouldn't try to jump the fence or sneak into the theater. I understand that. But folks, they shut off immigration to my particular ethnicity post-World War I. And by that time, one of the brothers, there were 5 brothers within my father's family, 4 of them made it here when it was legal, and 1 didn't.
1 didn't.
And so they said to that one,
who didn't?
That didn't, why don't you join the Merchant Marines? I said, what? He said, join the Merchant Marines. And when you come into Boston, New York Harbor, make believe that you're in the Olympics and do a swan dive into the Hudson River.
Okay.
We will fish you out of there, right? Which is precisely what they did. And dirty little secret. And in any case, my youngest uncle, they shipped him off to Detroit, Michigan, with some distant relatives, so people wouldn't be able to track them. The INS, those days would be the Internal Revenue, not the immigration, right? He was there for 25 years.
In Detroit?
In Detroit, Michigan, and he would send money to his family in the old country and sneak over there like for 3 months a year, you know what I mean? And then come back.
Back in those days, it was much easier to come and go.
That's the way they did it. 25 years he was here, and one of my cousins who got himself in some trouble with law enforcement.
Very nice.
Decided that the way to get bail or mitigate his problems was to flip on his uncle. So he did a parrot special on his uncle.
That's terrible.
But he did it.
Oh God.
And the next thing you know,
yeah,
my dear uncle
was deported. They
grabbed him and deported him back to the old country. So why I tell this story is people think that what's happening is the dream is. My uncle was here for 25 years, never committed a crime, went to work every single day, paid the taxes and the rest. As a matter of fact, ironically, when they deported him, they had to send him Social Security checks to the old country.
Don't tell me anymore. That's terrible to do something like that.
Yeah.
You think it's funny?
I think it's hilarious.
It's not funny at all.
The reason, but I'm not talking about hilarious in the sense that it's so off the reservation.
What did they do to the guy that squealed on him?
Oh, are you kidding? They rewarded him. Let me tell you about my cousin. I won't mention his name per se, but he was a character. He was a character and a half. This guy, if any of you folks remember Lou Groza was a place kicker, field goal kicker for the, I think the Browns, the Cleveland Browns. He was a very famous football player. Well, my cousin looked just like him physically, and he pretended that he was Lou Groza, in which he would sell endorsements. Lou Groza endorsed this product and that product. Happened to be my cousin.
Can I say one thing? For a guy that didn't go to Harvard Business School, he was a genius.
But you got to understand something. It's even better. You've met his nephew, by the way. His nephew fixed our car, but we won't mention names.
Okay.
This guy
Oh, God.
who looked like Lou Groza, who was selling her, he also came up with a marvelous idea during the era of the Cold War when everybody was panicking and building bomb shelters.
Bomb shelters as a
Well,
little kid, yeah.
He was a contractor allegedly for bomb shelters. He was selling stock and this and that for his bomb shelter company, which of course didn't exist. And now this is true story, folks. He was commissioned as an officer in the armed forces, like a major or a lieutenant colonel. He never served in the military, but he somehow got papers saying he did. This guy was unbelievable. Do you remember Foster Furcolo?
He was the governor here.
Yeah. Well, who do you think one of his lackeys was? This fellow that we won't mention that happened to be related to me. And his job was to assign people to various positions in state government. And of course, if you were applying for a job, like if you were a butcher and you wanted to be head of, some type of other organization that had nothing to do with butchery, you had to pay a premium. Do you understand what I'm talking about? So he was in charge to picking up these things called white envelopes. And within the white envelopes would be a gratuity. And then you get the job or the position. That was your application. Well, Foster Furcolo got beat by Endicott Peavy, I believe. And I don't think that all of the jobs got filled. So consequently, one had to become a fugitive. And that fugitive ended up in Germany, of all places.
In Germany.
While in Germany, he was installing bowling lanes. Okay.
This is an amazing man.
He is an amazing man.
Is he still alive?
No. What happened is that he pined to come back to the States, so he cut a deal with the federal government. So the reason why he had a bowl, because a lot of people went down the tubes
Because
if he was a parrot, right?
Right.
Because of the application fees, right? So he cut a deal with the feds, and you end up going to a place called Danbury, which is like a country club.
Yeah.
So you spend 6 months, a year maybe there. And thereafter, they didn't want to bring him back to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, so they found him a nice position with the Department of whatever in Connecticut. And he became, quote unquote, an engineer down there. This guy was an absolute genius. You know the picture they made, The Great Imposter?
With Tony Curtis.
That's right. He and The Great Imposter are one and the same, let me tell you. I think that I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't perform surgery. You know what I'm trying to say? But it's there were some interesting characters. You can't do that today, by the way. Those type of characters are long gone. And they made a picture recently, Come and Catch Me or something to that effect with Tom Hanks.
I don't know.
Now, speaking of Tom Hanks, you know one of my all-time favorite pictures was Forrest Gump. Did you ever see Forrest Gump?
That was a good picture. Why? Because it was a great story.
It was a great story.
It was a great story. The guy that wrote that story, I'm telling you, made a great film.
Yeah, I agree with you. But and this is what I'm trying. I mean, I didn't watch the Oscars, and I saw something on the social media in which some guy said this. He says, "I haven't watched baseball in 10 years. I haven't watched basketball in 5 years. I haven't watched football in 3 years." And he said, and I happened to be flipping through the TV, and they were doing some type of draft, and all of a sudden they're talking about social issues, this, that, and the rest of it. He says, and I knew why I don't watch sports anymore, professional sports anymore. And I thought about that, and I was glued to the TV set on weekends. I mean, if my kids walked by, you wouldn't even know that I was their father. I was just focused in on the football games and sports. I haven't watched a football game in about 4 or 5 years.
I don't watch sports.
I don't watch. I mean, you know what?
So boring.
How can anybody who is making tens of millions of dollars knock this country? Explain that to me.
Yeah, it's all part of a package. At the same time, I think that well, I don't want to say it.
What?
I was thinking about something that someone was.
Okay, well, have you thought about it? Is it coming out of you, or it's
Well,
gonna remain a secret?
He said if it wasn't for professional sports, black people would kill more people.
Someone said that. But let me ask you this.
And you know something. There's some truth behind that.
Look, throughout history, sports has been a vehicle by which folks who were disadvantaged, or whatever you want to say, downtrodden,
Could buy a house.
when the Irish first came over, what could they do? They had tap dance or play sports. Then came the Jews. You know, people don't realize the Jews originally, particularly from Chelsea, were killers. Boom, boom. They were gangsters, right? And then they went into sports and entertainment and on to Harvard Law School and med school and sanitized themselves. You know that. Who was this? Morgenthau? What's that famous Jewish family in which he was a mafioso type, but he cleaned up his act. His family's done very well, and they've contributed to society quite nicely.
Well, what is the opening sentence in the book of the God? In the book of the Godfather, it says, "A man can steal more with his briefcase than 10 men with machine guns."
Of course, yeah, but the opening line actually was America born and Satan sat in the courtroom this week awaiting justice.
Well, I'm talking about the little paragraph before you get that far in.
Oh, yeah? America born and Satan means good night, America.
Yeah.
That's a play on words. Seeking justice. And if you folks understand our Sicilian mentality, which pretty much is Arabic, an eye for an eye, tooth for tooth.
That's biblical.
And it is biblical. And what happens is simply this, is that an undertaker, whose name was America Bonaceda, had gone to see the Godfather because when a Sicilian male daughter is to be married, you came to see me and you ask a favor of me, I have to grant you that favor. That's tradition. And he came to see the Godfather, although he didn't want any part of the Godfather. He considered himself an Americano. He was now, I no do those things, better things. And he asked the Godfather to do a number on a bunch of young boys, some white privileged folks from New York that had violated his daughter, right? And
the good Godfather says, "What do you want me to do?"
Well, the Godfather said, someday I'm going to ask you for a favor, right?
Right.
And he had to kiss the ring, as you well know. But the Godfather refused to kill.
He said, "Your daughter's still alive. I can't kill them. This is murder." And then after the man left, he said to Tom, "I want you to get good people who are reliable, people who won't get carried away, no matter what this undertaker thinks. We're not just a bunch of murderers."
Exactly. Very good. You remember that, huh?
Okay.
That was equal justice.
That was the first job I had on a feature film, and I was still in college.
Really?
Yeah. I should rephrase that. What was my job? You get me 2 coffees, and I don't want sugar in it.
You studied film.
Yeah, I went to England for 6 years.
You told me, yeah. So tell me, this is life on a fast lane, folks. And it is life on a fast lane because you lived a fast life.
I had a very good life up until a certain point in time. Then it just stopped. And when you're going at 90 miles an hour and all of a sudden it stops, what happens? You crash. Okay? So if you crash and you're lucky enough to survive it, and you mend and you heal and you go through some time, you try to get back again. That's why I have a stage play that's being typed up.
So you're trying to get to 90 miles an hour again?
No.
You want to step on the pedal?
I want to do 45 miles an hour. Because when you're doing 90, you miss the view.
Aha, that's a really good philosophical thought. So here we are.
I missed the view. I had a lovely fiance.
I love that metaphor.
So
Keep going with it.
I was so busy with trying to become the next Charlie Chaplin of our time. And I would come close. That's why my parents would help me out. I would come home and go away with a new story, come home with a major contract. And then the contract would fall apart. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It was like God saying, no. Okay. And when he says no, there's nothing you can do, but you still got to keep on trying. So why am I trying now? I'm an old man by Hollywood standards. Okay. I mean, like I am over the hill by Hollywood standards. But the fact that I can still deceive myself by thinking that maybe there's a possibility I'm back in business.
I'm older than you. And we're doing this show, right? A couple of old white guys who were going 90 miles an hour and missed the view. And I agree with you. I had a great life. I still do.
Yeah.
And I'm.
But you had more than a great life. You got married and had a family. So after you're no longer here, you're still here. You see me explain something to you.
But wait a second. You're still here because you wrote plays. I'm still here because I do art.
Okay, but hear me out for a second. Someone says, how do you describe someone's life? One's life does not take place in the Jewish religion until after you pass away. And it's the things that people say about you after you're gone, that's what constitutes a person's life. If after you're gone and they say at the cemetery, you know, he was a really nice guy, he even thought about people other than himself, that's your life. If they say he wasn't such a nice guy, he never helped anybody, you could never get anything from this man had a miserable temperament, then that's your life. But while you're here, you're not, you don't have a life, you are making one. It's until they lay you down, then the life starts.
That's a wonderful thought. I
Okay.
like that. Yeah, I do. I like that. Tell me about why stones. The Jewish people leave stones at the. What is the significance of that? I've always been
Because
curious.
you're not, can I answer that honestly?
Yeah.
You're not supposed to bring flowers. So I asked the rabbi, why can't you bring flowers? Because that's what the Christians do.
And that's it.
That's it.
But you know, interestingly, isn't Christianity nothing more than a form of Judaism?
Hell no.
No?
Hell no.
Of course it
You
is.
people are nothing but a pain in the neck.
What about Josephus?
What about him?
He was a Jew. So was it Jesus.
Yeah, Jesus was a rabbi. A rabbi.
On top of it.
But they took away his, what they call his rabbinical certification. You know,
Did you certify him?
Yeah. Let me say something to you. In the first temple, there was a room. And in that room, all kind of strange things took place. In other words, we believe that Jesus could possibly have walked on water, that he could have performed some of these miracles because he had gone into that room. That was known as the room of miracles, okay? But we do not believe, but what problem, his problem is he said things that didn't sit well with everybody else.
But actually, Christianity is an offshoot of Judaism, as is Islam.
Christmas was invented by Jewish store owners.
Go ahead.
Okay, to sell you stuff for that ridiculous holidays for every trick you ever made in your entire life. And then when we bring up the cash with the ding, we say, thank you, Merry Christmas.
You look a lot like, with this new outfit that you got on, you look a little bit like a thin version of Santa.
I do not.
Yes, you do.
Thank you.
I'm going to call you Santa from now
Go
on.
ahead.
We're up against it. You know, life in the fast lane is pretty fast. So some parting words for the folks out there?
Peace on earth. Everybody be well. It's been a crazy couple of years between the pandemic and people not having jobs and people just rubbing each other the wrong way. Please stop, settle down. You know, we used to have a day off, don't smoke. You know, one day, don't smoke. We should have a day off. Everybody be nice. You know?
Great parting thought, folks. Avrahm Stepides, life
Shalom.
on the fast lane.